very hearty good evening to all the participants of this 17th Weekend Talk. Center of Excellence in Safety Engineering and Analytics, IIT Kharagpur welcomes all the participants. This program is conducted under Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, celebrating 75 years of India's independence. As always, we start this session with this wonderful shloka, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, Asatoma Sadgamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityorma Mritam Gamaya, which inspires us to lead us from ignorance to the truth, from darkness to the light, and from death to immortality. So there is an announcement. We have an international conference. IIT Kharagpur is organizing an international conference on maintenance, intelligent asset management. Along with IIT Kharagpur, Federation University Australia, Asset Management Council Australia, and Manipal Academy of Higher Education India are organizers for the same. So the dates are very important. Kindly note the dates. The conference will be from 12th to 15th of December. And abstract submission deadline is 24th of September, that is today. And paper submission deadline is 22nd of October 2021. And notification of abstract acceptance will be given by 30th September 2021. And notification of paper acceptance by 30th October 21. All are requested to submit the abstracts as per the given timelines. So with this, we welcome all the dignitaries to the virtual dais. We have Professor J. Maiti, Chairman, COE, SEA. Sir, I'll request you to just start the videos. Thank you, sir. We have Dr. Vivek Khanjode, our expert speaker of the evening, and Professor Obi Krishna, who will be joining us within some time. So, Professor Vivek Khanjode is an associate professor at NITI in Operations and Supply Chain Management area. He received his MTech and PhD from the Department of Industrial and Systems Engineering, IIT Kharagpur, and he has conducted research in modeling risks of occupational injury and development of comprehensive framework for hazard monitoring and risk analysis, and applied the models in mining and manufacturing environments. He has published his research in journals like Applied Ergonomics, Safety Science, Injury Control, and Safety Promotion. Work and Journal of Musculoskeletal Research. So presently he is working on the catastrophic failures in complex work systems and applying AI and ML methods to accident analysis. His other interests include work system design, digitalization, and simulation in manufacturing, and supply chain and logistics optimization. He is also involved in consulting and applied research projects funded by the public sector and industrial organizations in the logistics and manufacturing sector. So I request Maiti sir to formally welcome our expert speaker on this very, very relevant topic for the industry. Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you, Mom. Thank you, Dr. Vivek Khanjode. And I am extremely happy that when we approached to Dr. Vivek and he accepted my request, and he also accepted to present in a topic which is very much relevant, contemporary, as well as there are many new things because of the digitalization of the work systems, production system. So the title you see that occupational safety, health and ergonomics in the digital area, digital era within a 1 hour of time. And I am closely connected with Dr. Vivek, and he did PhD in our department, and I was lucky to have research scholars like Vivek, and he is a very good orator, and he is a he has multiple talent. What I mean to say, suppose the quality domain, you just tell him to speak maybe 2 hours at a stretch in quality management, he will be able to speak. You talk about manufacturing, he will be able to speak. Talk about safety, ergonomics. So a true sense, an industrial engineer and a thorough researcher, I am telling you. And I'm sure that today the audience will see the glimpses and you all will be really benefited and very happy you will be having many takeaways. Considering the topic is a vast one and the newness of it, so the more of the conceptual part of it with certain applications, I'm sure that Professor Vivek will be covering. And Professor Vivek, I heartily welcome you to this weekend talk, and it is your alma mater, and you are also very much a family member of this Center of Excellence in Safety Engineering and Analytics, IIT Kharagpur. So now the stage is yours. So thank you so much for accepting, and also I'm thankful to all the participants for joining this weekend talk.
Thank you, sir. Very warm good evening to all of you. Professor Maiti sir, Professor Gopi Krishna sir, and thank you, Ms. Mom, for that nice introduction. Today, the coming 45 to 50 minutes, we'll have some glimpses on the subject topic of this session, that is how the domain of occupational safety and health and ergonomics is changing, has changed, and how it is affecting the human performance, the human factors. As Professor Maiti rightly said, it's a very vast and highly interdisciplinary topic, and there is a lot of complexity in that, involving research and practice from several domains. And that is why we would look at some glimpses and try to focus on a small number of critical aspects of that, keeping the human at the center. Because the fundamental thesis of today's discussion is that while the work systems have evolved, while the systems have become more and more digital, the focal point of that is the human being, is still the same. And there is no chance that the humans will evolve in those coming even 100 or 200 years or so, because human and biological evolution is extremely slow. So the pace at which the systems are changing is very rapid and exponential, but the human operator, who is an important part of these systems and who is running those systems and for whom all these systems are operating, still remains the same. And that is where many new challenges are coming up. And in fact, I also have been attending this series, these sessions, and some of those topics, contemporary topics, are being raised on this platform, including the very last week lecture by Dr. Raj Gopalan, where right at the beginning of his talk, he introduced, narrated a very interesting concept that human brings the resilience in the system. So with that thread, I will now share my screen and present my thoughts over the next, say, 45-50 minutes. I hope you are able to see the slides in presentation mode. So we are saying occupational safety, health, and ergonomics in the digital era. We'll look at the digitalization, the risk factors that the digitalization has posed, the impact of digitalization on occupational safety and health as a domain, as a discipline. And after looking at that, after looking at broadly what is happening, we'll get into some of the fundamental concepts of complexity, ergonomics. We'll look at some couple of basic models which give the essence of these ideas and see how some of those things are changing. We'll also look at what is human performance model, and then I'll present a small use case at the end where we'll see how these latest techniques like AI/ML can be used, and possible directions in the digitization. So we often keep saying digitization and digitalization, those two words, but all of us probably by this time know that while digitization is at a very fundamental stage where the conversion of analog data is made into digital data, existing data and documents are converted. For example, we have a document and we scan it, it becomes a document in digitized form. So digitization at a very basic level. However, digitalization then evolved as a concept as the interconnectivity of the systems started growing, and several digital technologies came into existence to completely alter the business model and provide new opportunities in terms of products, bringing in revenues and offering value to the consumers. So it's a process of moving from conventional ways of doing business to the digital business. And that is where all the functions in an enterprise, in an organization are now that they are digitalized, we need to look at what are the issues in our domain, that is occupational safety and health. So what does digitalization mean for occupational safety and health? How it is shaping the workplaces and workers' safety and health, and how we can address the challenges and maximize the opportunities. Because yes, there are challenges, but then there are several opportunities presented also. So we'll have a look at them one by one. So digitization is offering a lot of potential for innovative developments, including new business models, basically because of the connectivity and the advancements in AI, ML, and related models. Quite a couple of years back, few years back actually, there had been a beautiful book written by the Cognizant team. It was titled as Code Halos. And the idea is using the code, halos is the, the aura behind our head, okay, which is even in conventional religious pictures and all is displayed. So this halo, which is using code, is created through the digital footprint that we create in the social media and on the web, on the internet. So when the companies like Google, Facebook, Instagram, and everyone pick that, use their powerful algorithms, they are able to predict so many things. And when the book was written, it's very interesting to read how something predicted 5 years ago, forecasted 5 years ago, has actually been practiced in businesses today. How it has actually come into reality in terms of all the predictive algorithms, right from the Google Maps that we use, right from the text suggestions in our mails and chats and messages, and then offering products, giving suggestions, and a number of things. It's a wonderful book, and anybody interested in how this digitalization has evolved, I recommend please read the book Code Halos by Cognizant. But we need to now see how the working environments are made safer by maximizing the benefits of such technologies. It has a potential to reduce occupational risks and create new opportunities for improving working conditions, especially because of specific technologies which could measure a lot of variables that resulted into risks and failures in the system. Now, if we are able to measure something, we are able to analyze it and predict it, any variable. That is a fundamental of science. And maybe 10 years ago, we were not able to record and measure several systems, several variables in the systems. Now it has become very easy. So that is the first opportunity presented by digitalization. Look at the technologies like AI, robotics, IoT, big data, wearables, mobile devices, and online platforms. All these now act in an integrated way, and I'm not purposefully used any word with 4.0 because it has become so cliche. Okay, we can as well say ergonomics 4.0, OSH 4.0, and so on. But it has become very common now. So we just say that all this is a part of digital digital systems. The digitalization is also fundamentally changing the work system. What is a work system? Any place where human carries out work in coordination with machine, equipment, or a control panel, or any device for that matter. So the nature of work being carried out has fundamentally altered. The location of the work is also altered, and that's what we have experienced in COVID during the pandemic and the lockdown. We shifted from offices to home, and we shifted from static to dynamic. We attend meetings on mobile devices, and while we are traveling, we attend, we participate in the meetings, we give the presentations, all these things. We are attending meetings. Some of us who are busier 2 or 3 meetings on 2 or 3 different devices, then they mute, unmute, and all these things are just going on. So you see, the nature of work has changed, the location of work has changed. Who will conduct the work and what point? So many opportunities have opened because the work is not confined to office space, to the plants. Okay, so there are dashboards, and a supervisor can use the remote access to get the information and to give the signals. Those technologies are already in place. It's not only the office work, it's the manufacturing, it's the plant operations, getting the information, running the plants, giving those triggers, taking those decisions, all those things are happening, right? So there's some, yeah. And all this is changing how the work is organized and managed, because the earlier way of organizing the work was around those mechanical and analog systems. But as the digital systems and so we use a term, we call this as the distributed workspace. The workspace is not confined to a specific shop floor or a specific machine or equipment. It is now distributed. Machine can be at one place, operator can be at one place, supervisor can be at the third place. So how to organize this distributed and fragmented workspace is the issue. How to manage that? So we need to look at that. It is the issues are further augmented by changing technologies. Robots are no longer simple devices carrying out given programs, but they are mobile, they are becoming smart, they are working collaboratively with human beings. The intelligent machines are taking over manual tasks, but cognitive tasks as well, not only manual tasks. So the manual, repetitive, and other tasks were already transferred to robots, but with the digitalization, the machines are becoming intelligent and they are picking up cognitive tasks. Workers are overseen by monitoring technologies and algorithms, and time is not far where they will be managed by intelligent machines. So there is a 180-degree shift where human controlling operator, controlling the machine, the robot, now will be managed by intelligent machines. So how are we going to organize this kind of work? What kind of processes we are going to use, and what will be the role of a human being who is still the same? Okay, we need to look at that. That is where you can see the new risk factors are evolving in the systems, in the digital work systems. We are 24/7 connected. This requires more flexible work organization. New forms of work are emerging, such as online platforms, a completely new business model. In the classical accident analysis and injury theories, we always have been talking about psychosocial and organizational risk factors. But those were of that static era. Now, in the digital era, new organizational risk factors, psychosocial risk factors are evolving. Work-related stress, poor mental health, people have started experiencing that. A very major issue, start digital pen, cyber security and functional safety associated with that. In fact, this is coming up in a big way. And from OSH domain that we were talking, it's the application of those regulations in digital systems and how to enforce that. Because the occupational safety and health regulations are largely designed for conventional work systems. And although there have been some of those recent initiatives where the regulatory authorities have started looking into that, still there is a lot that needs to be evolved in terms of digital systems. Most of the discussion in digitalization is about the quantities and the performance measures in a system like the throughputs, inventory, lead time, productivity, utilization, costs, and so on. But we need to see how it is the quality of the work and not only quantity will be considered when we design these systems, digital systems. The systems need to be smart, sustainable, and at the same time productive. We need to build safer and healthier workplaces and minimizing the negative impacts on worker safety and health. We need to maximize the prevention opportunities offered by digital technologies. So there is a trade-off between these, and we need to come up with the models which are able to achieve that. So there are two ways in which we can look at it. One is the advanced robotics and AI technologies, and second is the flexible work. There are smart cobots, exoskeletons, big data AI and algorithms, smart PPE, VR, AR, and additive manufacturing are some of the dimensions along which we can look at the technologies. So as already said, the robots are becoming smart, they are becoming collaborative, and we can see their increasing presence at the workplace. Because of the development in the sensors technology, it is now possible for people and robots to work collaboratively, work together. And because of the development in algorithms, computing facilities, the cobots are now able to learn from human colleagues. For example, in legal casework and medical diagnosis, you have a rich history of the cases, and you are able to dig out the common factors and build on that, and are able to diagnose and predict. So some of those things we are already seeing, but we will also see these cobots very commonly in customer-facing jobs, increasing presence in healthcare, hospitality, agriculture, manufacturing, transport, and service sectors. This is what we are going to experience. So already we have started removing workers from hazardous situations and improved quality of work in repetitive tasks is being achieved. Use of cobots have already provided access to work for differently abled and aging persons, because this is a population group where they may not be able to carry out the work in the conventional form, but with the support and assistance with cobots, the smart devices, they will still be able to take up the job, making the workplace more inclusive. So towards inclusivity, these cobots can be deployed very effectively. Again, there are those risks and the injuries due to direct contact with either the robots or equipment are still a possibility. They can behave sometime in an unanticipated manner, and which can result into the risk of injury, which is very common again. Although there is a continuous research going on, and algorithms are evolving at a very good pace. So at the initial stage of technology, there were more such risks, but now they are coming down significantly. But while the risk of injury is coming down, there is another angle to that. The workers need to keep pace with the cobots, and that is where there is the stress, which we traditionally call as the job stress. So this additional angle that has been brought into that. Secondly, the contact with the human peers and colleagues will be significantly reduced, and the effects of that are as of now very less investigated. There is some work in that, but then we need to go ahead and see what will be the actual effects of that on the human being. Next, the assistive devices which are worn on human body, the exoskeletons, are another major this thing, a part of this entire digital work system, where the manual handling tasks which are conventionally carried by using human body, directly placing the load on the muscular system, is now shared to a large extent by these body-worn assistive devices. Especially in military settings and medical care settings, we see several applications of exoskeletons. But again, the long-term effects of these devices are less known, and obviously they should be considered as last resort in designing any system or including them in any system, because the system level interventions, organization of work where the human are exposed to minimum loads through design has to be the primary approach, and this comes as the last resort. On a different note, work is increasingly overseen and coordinated by algorithms, big data and AI. As we have more and more sensors, we have more and more data, and we can track the operators, the workers, using several kind of data inputs, as said here. The smart monitoring tools can improve OHS surveillance and help in prevention based on evidence. It also increases efficiency of inspections and reduces the human bias in the entire surveillance and inspection of workplaces, audit also. Next is the PPEs. So smart PPEs is, I think, many of us have already seen using, and it helps in real-time monitoring of hazards. Provides early warnings and real-time advice to influence safe behavior. They help us in collecting information, and based on that, predict potential problems. But here the issue is in terms of devising effective strategies and ethical decisions to handle large sensitive data, because they are variables. They collect a lot of parameters from the human operator, and obviously they need to be used judiciously. That is first thing. And secondly, like any system, if there is malfunction or incorrect data that or advice that can actually result into either injury or ill health on behalf of the operator. So we need to look at some of those issues. VR/AR has become extremely powerful, and it gives us certain opportunities on immersive training and supporting maintenance tasks. We are able to extract the contextual information on hidden hazards. Of course, we need to design the interfaces in that particular way, which requires a lot of domain knowledge to design the system and to be able to simulate the real environment. Apart from, obviously, those were very common in aircraft and flight operations, but now many industrial situations can be designed and simulated using the virtual and augmented reality. However, it needs access to up-to-date and relevant high-quality information to make the simulations more meaningful. That is point number one. And point number two is it has some of its flip sides like distraction, information overload, disorientation, motion sickness, and eye strain. So those are some of the issues we need to look at. Additive manufacturing has come in a big way in industry 4.0 and related technologies. Bioprinting of organs, smart materials are becoming common, but they are bringing new risks, especially exposure to dangerous substance and dust and those kind of particles for a completely different worker population who are working in that domain. Those are small companies. So actually, we conducted this kind of study in a couple of companies in Mumbai, well known in the domain of additive manufacturing, although they are small companies, and we were surprised to see the conditions. I mean, such an excellent technology, but the way the operators, I mean, the work is organized and the people are exposed to those substances and particles. And there is no, for such a small, maybe laboratory, there is no occupational health and safety standard. So it's very difficult to enforce that. There are micro companies or nano companies kind of, and that issue is yet unaddressed. Then the next part of that, as I said, was the flexible work. Now, the flexible work environment has increased the workload, long working hours. Like as I said, we keep working using our mobile devices, but then we never consider the ergonomics. And eventually the sedentary work and related posture-related issues result into the MSD, that is the musculoskeletal disorders. Today we may not see the impact, but it's the prolonged exposure over a period where we will be able to actually appraise the real or the true impact of this kind of flexible work environment. Another thing is if the environment is self-managed or AI managed, the responsibilities of who will be responsible for occupational safety and health related issues at that workplace, and if it is remotely managed, then who will be responsible are not well documented. There are still issues in that. For example, online platforms match the labor demand with supply. It's a skill or a specialist job. Work is carried out in different environments, and it's managed by web-based applications or platforms. Like a plumber comes to home and does the repair, or all the Zomato and Swiggy and all that, and including all the e-commerce delivery boys. The delivery, the way they carry the packets, and there is certainly an ergonomic issue in that, in terms of the loads and the number of hours and the way they travel, and including the driving safety, the way they drive. There are many issues, in fact. which need to be examined. We need to go back to basics and start looking at those issues. People have to work at short notice duration, remain available. Irregular working hours is a feature especially when you are connected to this kind of online platforms. There are blurred boundaries of work, and there are no training opportunities because you are on your own. You are not part of a systematic organization. And most of the times, the flexibility, when it comes as a choice, is really good. But when it is imposed on the workers in the system, then it really becomes a burden. And that is the basic issue here. Depending on the work environment, the occupational safety and health risks vary significantly in different environments. And just like the additive manufacturing technology, in this kind of situations also, there are challenges in regulation and enforcement of standards. So while we are talking about removal of workers from hazardous situation and repetitive tasks, and talking about higher autonomy and flexibility, access to a diverse workforce, we have now more advanced models for workplace risk assessment and more effective training and the simulation in terms of representing the reality. This is the other side where we have exposure to the new risks which are coming up. Many of them are still unknown. There are functional risks, cyber security, increased work complexity adding to the stress, and on a large scale unclear responsibility of OSH in these kind of domains. It's not across the board, let me say again, but there are specific domains in which that clarity is not there. Those areas are still gray, and the regulatory bodies need to work on that. So while we are talking about this complexity, all of us now experience that the digitalization has brought in a greater complexity in this system. Let's go back to some fundamental, which what I'm presenting here is a very basic thought on work system by Charles Perrow. He had written a wonderful book called Normal Accidents, and that was on the backdrop of 3 Mile Island's nuclear incidents. And at that time, while looking at those kind of complex systems, he came up with classification of these systems on 2 axes. One axis is the x-axis here. It shows the complexity of the systems, and it's not in terms only of systems, but the interactions that happen in the system. What are these interactions? The interaction is when I, as a human operator, work along with a machine, a system, a control panel, then I am said to be interacting with the system. Those of you who would have heard the lecture by Professor Rajagopalan, the very first slide that he placed, okay, there was that 100-year ago image he showed, a human operator, a typical 19th century stout and strong worker operating the valve in that pipeline. He explained that he need to be there, sit there, and keep vigilance and then operate. So he had a way in which he interacted with that mechanical system. He applied some force using his hands, and then he adopted some posture. He had a way. That was one way of interacting with the system. Just besides, he showed another, the same technology, same chemical plant, but a large digital screen. The operators busy with their mobiles because they know that alarm will come, and then they are sitting relaxed in the control room, but relaxed but vigilant. Yes, they have to keep an eye on that, but the system is, and then whenever some signal comes, they keep looking at that. And then he showed that when they keep looking at that, the issue of eye tracking and monitoring that movement comes in, and that gives rise to a whole science where you capture the eye tracking movements, and based on that decide how. So that is another way of interacting in the digital world. So see, the things have changed, right? By interacting physically with a valve or a pump, and interacting digitally with a complex digital control system or control board. So the systems become more complex on this axis as we move from left to right, and they are tightly coupled in the sense if something happens. Now, those of you in chemical plants would experience that the systems internally are tightly coupled. If some reaction happens at a place, it has got implications across several locations in the system. So that is called as a tightly coupled system. So while the conventional manufacturing, including the the manufacturing, the assembly line production and all, was not so tightly coupled and less complex. Now, if you look at some of the more advanced systems, they are more and more tightly coupled. And what has happened is now even this most of the manufacturing, because of the increase in complexity and coupling, the devices are interconnected. So if something happens at one place, it has implications across the system. It either would simply come to halt or result into a failure, which may be catastrophic at some or other point of time. By design, many of the chemical industries, the aircraft operations, nuclear plant and related technologies, some of those technologies by design are complex and tightly coupled systems. So sometimes it leads to unforeseen interactions and result in system failures. So this is one fundamental aspect that we must note, that most of the digital systems in which we are carrying out the productive work have now become tightly coupled and very complex. And how to address the challenges in these kind of systems is one prominent issue that the researchers are trying to address today. So having seen the complexity, let us get back to the basics and just see at the basic model of ergonomics, because we are now talking about the human. Whatever the technology may change, human being still remains the same. And that is where the ergonomics, which basically studies interaction between human and machines, and by improving those interactions, you can improve the performance of the system. So you need to see how you design in a better interface and design out the factors that degrade the human machine performance. So what are those factors? On the left hand, it's a very simple model of ergo systems. Ergo systems are those in which humans carry out the work along with the machines. And you see there can be a single human operator or maybe a human operator along with a machine. Those are simple systems, very fundamental or elementary systems. But now we are talking more about this kind of complex systems where there are several entities present and therefore multiple and overlapping interactions. In terms of looking at a process, this side represents the right hand side figure where there are certain inputs to the system. Those inputs can be in the form of matter, energy and information, and some outputs in the form of product, again the energy and some knowledge. But then there are some byproducts in which there are wastes. And obviously, accident comes as a byproduct, it's undesired completely. Injuries and all that are also there. Wastes and heats can be recycled, but then there are those undesired products, which we need to look at. If we want to minimize that, we need to see the way the human and the machine are interacting in the system and how we can design out some of those factors. So this is the fundamental concept. Another, just like Pero, another basic model of work system, which was, T. Lehman was the scientist who proposed this, where we can quickly look at the central part of this model, where there is a human operator. On this side, this is the human part of the system, and this is the machine part of the system. The machine is having some controls and some display where you see the results, what is happening. Now what happens is I will follow this arrow which the display is read or understood by the human being using senses, primarily the eyes, the input, and then we do the processing. For example, we look on the control panel, a signal comes, we do the processing because we are trained to operate the plant, and then we use our effectors. What are effectors? Our hands and feet to control the system or the equipment. So we do this control action. This cycle continues on and on. But what has happened is now this sensing, sensing part which was done by the human being is now replaced by the digital sensors, right? They are replaced by the digital sensors, and the control action is also replaced by the digital or the devices which are getting the signal from these sensors and automatically doing the control action in an auto control mode, right? So what is the role of human then? What is the role of human? The role of human will come in critical conditions. I hope all of you must be following, or at some or other point, what happens with all the experiments that Tesla is doing. There have been reported, published this thing where, which is a part of the research, that there is a driver sitting in their automatic vehicle, auto car, and the driver has to do nothing. Okay, just be there. The car will drive itself. But they are experimenting and still possibly exploring that issue where there is an emergency situation and the driver has to take over in that emergency situation. The question is that if the driver is not driving in the normal situations, how he can take over in the emergency situation? And of course, there is research and a lot of literature going on. I'm just posing this question, and I think we should give a thought to this particular issue, where if under normal situations you are not supposed to drive, and therefore possibly your awareness, situational awareness, is at a lower certain level, because when we are driving we are very active. When you are told to sit just like that, you are sitting just like that. And then suddenly a signal comes and you are required to take over. Okay, so what will be the level of preparedness required, level of training required for that human operator? We need to look at that. And this issue is still being resolved, and possibly with some of those advancements in these digital technologies, we hope to see the light at the end of tunnel in maybe a few years, if not months, I would say. So obviously, this classic approaches in ergonomics are still valid, because you still have certain jobs where you pick the operators based on certain aptitude, a set of aptitudes that they carry. Where either physical or the psychological criteria were very standard in those cases, but with the digital work systems in which these kind of specialized jobs are being done, like working in extreme conditions like submarines, high altitude operations, underground minings, or the army operations, all these cases, extreme conditions. With the digital devices and the digital systems, now what are the characteristics? What are the what we can say, the aptitudes that are required by the operators of these systems? We need to answer that question. That is one part. On the other hand, when we look at more conventional work systems where we can fit the job to the man, this is fit the man to the job. So FMJ and FJM is very common. I didn't say that. So here we need to look at, because as I said, human is the same, how we can change the job around the human operator, so that these new interactions happening due to digitalization of the system can be effectively used by the human operator, can be effectively perceived, understood, processed, and used. So that part opens up several issues in conventional ergonomics. So we are actually doing some work here where we are looking at these approaches of designing work systems, especially more and more complex systems, and what could be the possible design issues, what work has been done in those areas so far, and what are some of the open opportunities. We are still at a level where we are exploring and trying to build some of the foundational blocks of knowledge. Thanks to some of those advanced measurement technologies, like we can now have the models to measure situational awareness, and at IIT Kharagpur, the team is actually doing a great work on that. So like that, there can be models which help us in looking at the human performance in the systems, and how do we model that. So why do we need to model it, the human performance? Because it saves significant amount of time and cost of the designers, and the models of human performance can be directly integrated into intelligent and smart systems, so that system safety and human performance can be improved and accidents can be prevented. Then ability to predict human behaviors that these models bring in means in many cases either accidents are prevented or the errors are minimized to improve system safety. What a good human performance model should have, those qualities. It should be able to quantify the relationships between the input and output of the model based on cognitive and motor systems mechanics of the human being. So that should be the starting point. The basic science should come from cognitive and motor systems, and the models related to that, which is very complex actually, but then that should be the starting point. Then the prediction should be useful in real world system design. When we use any models, there is always an issue of underfitting and overfitting. Underfitting is still okay, but there are issues where, especially with highly sophisticated AI/ML tools, it results into overfitting, and then that becomes an issue, because if you overfit a data from one particular experiment for other, when you replicate it, the fit becomes very poor. So we need to have a robust model which will reasonably fit across different experimental data, and still will be having good predictive ability. And basically in this domain, the challenge is to build models for next moment prediction. That is, human with the given cognitive abilities, certain data coming in terms of the inputs received from a digital system, how he or she will be behaving, how the human operator will be behaving at that particular point, just in the next moment. That is the real challenge in modeling human performance in the digital systems. It's almost 9 in just short time. I will explain a use case, and at basic level what we are doing here. Now this is primarily all of us know that. So there are injury reports and narratives. If we look at any incidents at the workplace, we classify them into 2 types. One of them is low frequency, high severity, which are catastrophic failures. which basically, this I have cited about Pero. So Pero talks about those catastrophic failures and calls them as normal accidents. But there are several high frequency, low severity incidents happening in a system, which may result into injuries. So we had conducted one such study on these traumatic injuries where the frequency is very high, surprisingly high, in fact, and they are actually caused out of potential risk in the system. So the way the system is organized, depending on the health of the system or depending on the conditions of the system, which in our conventional accident literature is called as the unsafe conditions. So under these unsafe conditions, there is a potential risk in the system. And in fact, the experts can rate this the potential of an incident in terms of severity. If an incident happens, what is its potential? But every time that fullest potential is not realized because there are certain safety measures taken and there are certain, even sometimes it's the chance calls because of which or certain actions carried out by the operator, the risk is realized in terms of a given injury severity. So you can say, if you say speak on a scale of 1 to 10 to be simple, there can be a potential in a given condition of system, a potential of 8 in terms of injury. But when the actual injury happens, it may be 1 or 2, or it may be even near miss. So there was a condition in the system where a high severity injury could have happened, but when actually the incident happened, it was a near miss incident. Okay, so because of and all this, is captured in the injury reports or narrative. This is the genesis of this study. So what we did is we looked at certain factors. We came up with a very basic model to represent this phenomena where there is a given potential of injury in the system, but when the injury happens, there is a certain extent of severity with which the injury happens. And we considered person, P is person, S is the system, and I is the interaction. So we were talking about interactions, right? Human and machine interact with each other. So interaction, that is the human operator in a system is carrying out certain work. And while that work is being carried out, there is energy transfer. Okay, because unless energy is used, the conversion processes won't happen. And while that is being done, the work is being done, we say that the human is interacting with the system. So while the human is interacting with the system, it is possible that the human operator may make some mistake or the system itself may fail. So that is why we represent this phenomena using these two words, IP and IS. So we get in total 4 ways in which we look at any incident to classify an incident based on the injury narratives. So there are, of course, other regulating or moderating factors. The particular job of a human, the activity or the task that the operator is carrying out. And when the injury happens, the medium, the part through which the energy is delivered to the human body, like a flying part comes and hits my hand. So medium is that, a flying piece of metal coming in, and the body part to which the injury happens. So a certain part coming and hitting my hand will have certain severity, but that part hitting my head or eye, much more severity. So it depends on body part also. So all these data, all this we modeled, and this is where, as I was saying, the transfer of risk, where the injury potential is assessed by the experts, but it is also moderated by these 4 factors, as I said, the person, the system, and in presence of interaction, who is responsible for that, the failure. The transfer of risk is measured using a statistical model. Next slide, we call it as the Reddit analysis, and we did this use case in underground coal mine environment. This is the model. I won't go into the mathematics of that, but that helps us in capturing what we call as the mean Reddit ratio that we got from this model, where the ratio tells us whether the risk of injury will go up or it will go down. So you have certain potential here, some X potential, whether that X will go up or go down when the injury actually happens. That's what is explained by this Reddit ratio. These are the injury narratives. I just placed this slide because we would like to see how it is reported. Most of the places, most of the industries where a proper system is there, this kind of narratives are usually available. We did the classification and got the result. The result is interesting. The result is the interaction, when the interaction is happening between the person and the system, there is maximum chance of risk enhancement. To make it simple, if the ratio is 1.0, the risk remains the same. If it is greater than 1.0, the risk goes up. And if we find that the ratio is less than 1, then the risk comes down. So whenever there is an interaction, and we call these kind of interactions as negative interactions in the system. In fact, one of the very fundamental paper published by Professor Maiti, and if I remember correctly, Dr. Paul talks about these negative interactions which are at the root of any sequence which leads to accidents. So we got that result here, but the point is not in terms of that result. The point is more in terms of what we are exploring now is, we are using NLP for analyzing these narratives, because if huge data is there, you may not go through all such things, and we need to do the coding. So we can pick some keywords like crossing, conveyor, fail, and got injury. Okay. Parts of speech being tagged like that, and then drilling, hot drill bit, and touched the bit, burn injury. So you see, there is a systematic process and algorithms available now, sophisticated algorithms available now, which help us to capture this. And based on that, do the classification and build the models using the techniques. This is what we have been doing. In different environments, this kind of work is done, where we found that the negative interaction is primarily at the root cause of these series of events. So we are further exploring that in more and more complex work systems. However, one thing in one such work done by my PhD students, we find that there is a lacuna of labeled data sets. Like these kind of labeled data sets are available in sentiment analysis and in some of the other business domains of like marketing and all for NLP. But in accident and injury domain, this kind of labeled data sets are hardly available. There are databases available, but the labeled data sets are not available, and it's a huge work actually, which needs to be done in the coming days. We looked at this, developing an algorithm for cross classification and risk assessment, and that work is going on. But the major part of that, which is still under, at a very basic level, is we are looking for injury potential assessment using sensor-based inputs, which actually requires a lot of use of technology, and that kind of possibly starting with laboratory settings where we create the environment, apply the sensors, and then see what data is coming, and based on that assess the potential. Of course, experts rate the injury potential to quite a good extent, but if they are assisted with this kind of inputs, then it will minimize the personal biases and will help us in building more accurate models. Further, still next challenge is which needs to be explored is dynamic assessment of risk, because the narratives that we looked at were kind of historic. So historic means the event has happened, and then we are looking at that. But then if those learning models are available, if those deep learning models are available with us, then the sensors would read the environment, plug in the data to the model, and the risk in the system, the potential risk in the system will be explored. That will help us in predicting, as just in a couple of slides before we were looking at, in a given situation, if there is certain kind of risk, then there is an operator, what signals he or she should be given to bring it down. So these are some of the things that we are looking at here, and I know the center at Kharagpur is doing great, lot of work in this area. Possibly they might have explored some of these things in different environments. But then these are some interesting things that we are looking. So just to conclude, we need frameworks for digitalization, including governance and enforcement. A very strong PTD, or prevention through design approach, needs to be adopted, which integrates human factors and work-centered design. We need to involve workers in design and implementation of digitalization strategies, which is not so common. It's not that the high-end technology decisions, there is a complete involvement, especially bringing technology and deploying it. You need to do that customization where the inputs from the operators, which can be organization specific, and you can come up with your own design of work system within the broader framework of technology which needs to be done. All the stakeholders, right from researchers and academicians, practitioners and regulatory agencies and all, need to collaborate together to account for human factors in digital systems. And there need to be a much greater dialogue on that. In new work environments, what should be the regulatory framework and who should have those responsibilities related to OSH need to be clarified. Of course, greater education and training, right from starting from back to basics is required. We need to relook at our entire domain in the light of the digital work systems. And of course, we need to deliver that effective OSS service to all the workers in the digital world. These are some of the sources I referred, and there are many more. I just cited a few of them here. That is all from my side. Thank you very much for patient hearing. And if there are any questions, I'm open for that. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. The talk was very informative and very interesting. And sir, we have learned a lot from your expert talk. Sir, we have found several questions in the chat box. So I am taking some of them. Like, sir, it is a question like that. I believe there is an uncertainty in every organization. So how to handle this uncertainty? For example, suddenly there can be delay in one of the raw products for production.
Okay.
So it may be one of the uncertainty. So how can deal with it?
Okay, so the question of uncertainty can be handled with different approaches. Okay, if you look at conventional operations approach, part of uncertainty that can be measured can be actually converted into risk. And then we have models which capture the risk. And then once the risk is captured, then we can look at the risk mitigation strategies and deploy those strategies across the work system. So how we are able to transfer that uncertainty into risk, because that uncertainty is going to remain. You cannot eliminate that, right? But how much of that can be measured is first thing. And thanks to, again, the AI/ML models and algorithms, which can extract a lot of features from the variables and help us in building better predictive. So that is a broad or overall approach, I would say. And secondly, in order to handle the uncertainty, because then once you have a certain part captured as a risk, still certain uncertainty will remain in the system, which for that purpose, you need to build resiliency in the system. So the systems need to be more resilient, and that way they will be prepared to handle that part which we cannot measure, we cannot even predict. That's what happened during the pandemic, right? That came in out of nowhere, kind of black swan event, and nobody was prepared to handle it. I hope answers your question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Now the second question is, sir, that generally we use SART, SART to assess the situational awareness. Now, this SART process is very much time consuming. So can you provide some light on it so that we can use some advanced approaches?
For the situation measurement of situational awareness, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I would humbly say that the team at IIT Kharagpur, Professor Maiti is the best person to answer it, because they are working on some of the very recent ways to measure situational awareness. So possibly when I request him to give his views on that.
Okay, I think Vivek, thank you, Dr. Vivek. So, in fact, the question actually is basically talking about that the proponent of situational Ainslie model, basically.
Yes.
So he has given the ways to measure the situational awareness, some kind of framework and questions are there. That is what I could gather.
Yeah.
But the question basically here is basically that one is basically he's saying that I think the question comes from Professor Kopil. So
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
yeah, so actually see, as the sensors are available nowadays, like I think already in the lecture, some exoskeletons kind of thing was discussed, smart PPE was discussed,
Yeah.
all those things. And similarly, if you recall the last lecture also, there are also some of the wearable now things are there. So like using the sensors data, as well as using a ML, making an ML engine, then you can real time that awareness also you can realize. That is basically the issue what we are trying to do here. But the major problem what we are facing here, who will give you this experimental opportunity? Nobody will give you this. No industry or no organization will expose their workers in such situations or operators. So as a result, what we are doing here in the virtual reality environment, we are trying to simulate the entire thing, and then we are bringing operators here, and then we are creating hazardous situation, and all those variables are used, and then the data we are collecting. That way, some research is going on.
Right.
So, okay, but if you ask me that in real life practical situation, then what is to be done? So far, I know that again we have to rely on those psychological and situational awareness questionnaires,
Right.
and you have to time you have to do it. Another issue is that maybe your video-based monitoring, if you can do along with those situational awareness studies. So this is what I can tell you at present. If we get some good result in future, definitely we will again put in we can talk such results.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So I am taking the last question, sir.
Yes.
It is telling, is there any side effects of using those sensor-based equipment on human being?
I think it's too early to fully understand, because while a product which is a wearable is being brought into market, which is basically done at the manufacturer and the certifying authorities end. But then again, in terms of long-term effects, it's, we have a very limited data in terms of the time horizon for which we have been using this on wide scale, right? So we still need to wait, but as of now, yes, there seem to be no major issues regarding this, except that it has got certain additional impact on the cognitive load, because you need to continuously be aware of those variables. So possibly you are being tracked, being monitored at that level. Back of the mind, some of those things are there. But beyond that, most of these technologies can be termed as safer technologies, as long as no longer duration studies are available.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
And now I would like to invite Professor Obi Krishna to formally greet, vote of thanks to our expert speaker. Yes, Professor Krishna.
I'm not seeing Mom. Mom, you're left or there?
I'm there, sir. I'm there.
Oh, good. Okay. Okay. Dr. Vivek, seeing you after many years. Maybe,
so nice to see
maybe
you
after 10, 15 years.
Yeah. It has been really long, but so glad to be with all of you today.
Yeah. Very, very, very. First of all, I'm thrilled to see you. Your ever smiling face, which normally missing in many of the humans nowadays. So that's a great.
Yeah, thank you, Paul.
First of all, let me thank you with the short notice you have accepted this your lecture. That's why I'm very, very thankful to you, because my colleague could not make it. That's why persons like you really save the situations. Thank you very much. And your talk was very interesting to me. You started with the digitalization and digitization, the simple definition, and took it very deep into your ergonomics, all these theories. Very interesting. But these exoskeletons and smart PPEs, they are very overlapping now. The effort is made to incorporate all those wearable things in the PPEs, so that PPE will become a part of life to the people. To get that's one of the things which the center would like to do it. And you have brought very important things like next movement prediction. It's a big challenge. I tell you from my experience, in spite of putting many advanced things, giving a lot of training, giving huge motivations, this next moment prediction, sometimes people miss and get into incidents. If this next moment prediction could be really brought through all these advanced technologies, could be a great useful thing for the human. Very nice. And you said injury potential assessment. So potentials are not being assessed. That's a very, very interesting thing. If any sensor could be made to assess the injury potential, nice. It would be a great achievement. It's a very nice topic you have touched in. It touched my heart. You talked many places. You talked about OSH regulations. I think you are aware of this OSH and working conditions code 2020, which has come up. It has taken many things. digitalization, all these aspects, many of the things have been incorporated in that code. How the people take it is more important. That's what we from IIT would like to tell the users, how this code could be integrated into your integrated safety management system, so that you can take the benefit of it. It's very well made code, very well made code. And the way forward which you have mentioned is really the way forward for us, for COE. We are also looking at those problems which are shown in the way forward. Most of those things will be challenges for us in the COE to tackle it. So overall, I'll appreciate you made the subject very, very simple to complicated. It took many people have liked the scholars. It has hit the scholars' heart. Very well done. And I also thank the audience, many audience who are there patiently hearing, and the moderators, Mom, Sinjana, Ashish, and Savik. They did a lot of things. And your teacher, your supervisor, Professor Maiti, is so happy to see your face. I could see both the faces of you and Professor Maiti. If I interpolate, I get most smiling face. So very nice, Professor Maiti. Thank you very much for your replies some of the questions. After all, you should be the owner of the whole subjects, and they should penetrate into COE, and much more solutions should come out. That's what we will look into.
Yeah. I just want to add only one point, Professor Krishna. You have said all those things. Basically, Dr. Khanjore has brought many research issues here, and a lot of concepts. Basically, for the time being, maybe sometimes we may not able to comprehend now, but ultimately, one important one is that the never normal, that concept what actually was told in the last lecture by Professor Rajagopal and Srinivasan. And now in this lecture, when he was talking about that coupling and your interaction,
tightly coupled.
Interaction and coupling, where the digital system is now intruding, I can say that basically that is making something different. And sooner or later, I think too, as soon as the industry will understand, particularly high risk plant like chemical and others, where mass digitalization is taking place, there is one of the important issue that is to be understood, researched, and proper intervention should be there. Otherwise, I'm telling you, maybe the near miss or low hanging instrument, injuries, level injuries may be completely out, but the very severe cases will come, and that nobody can thought of that will happen one day. So nice of you, Vivek. You have basically touched my heart also. From the research point of view, I'm so happy, Professor Krishna.
Okay, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Next week, we'll again meet with one more great speaker. And thank you all.
So thank all the participants. Okay. Good night. Have a good day also.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yes, Vivek, please go ahead.
What did he say?